Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books and Bytes. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into Mark Twain's Adventures of Huckleberry Finn.
Oh, classic.
Yeah, classic. You probably already know it, but um, what makes this book so powerful and why is it still relevant today?
That's a great question. It's a book that has sparked a lot of debate over the years, but at its heart, Huckleberry Finn is a story about freedom, morality, and the hypocrisy of society.
Yeah.
It follows the journey of Huck, a young boy escaping his abusive father,
Right.
who teams up with Jim, a runaway slave, as they raft down the Mississippi River.
Right. And their journey becomes this amazing backdrop for exploring some really big themes.
Absolutely. Along the way, Twain uses satire and Huck's unique perspective to expose the absurdity of racism, the dangers of blind faith, and the tension between societal expectations and individual conscience.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit.
Yeah.
We've got Huck Finn, this rebellious boy who would rather sleep outside than be civilized by the widow Douglas and Miss Watson.
Right.
He even fakes his own death to escape his awful father.
And that death is crucial because it's a symbolic act. It represents Huck shedding the constraints of society and embarking on a path of self-discovery. It's no coincidence that he meets Jim, who has also run away shortly after this. They're both seeking freedom, but in different ways.
And their escape road is the Mississippi River, which becomes more than just a setting.
Exactly. The river is a powerful symbol of freedom and escape. Its constant flow mirrors Huck and Jim's journey, full of twists and turns and unexpected encounters.
Right.
It's almost a character itself, shaping their experiences and forcing them to adapt.
But their journey isn't just about physical escape.
Right.
It's about Huck's internal struggle, too.
Precisely. Remember, Huck is a product of his time. He's been raised to believe that slavery is natural,
Yeah.
that helping Jim is wrong.
Right.
Yet as he spends more time with Jim, he begins to question everything he's been taught.
We see this inner conflict play out in that famous scene where Huck decides to help Jim despite believing he'll go to hell for it.
That's a pivotal moment. Huck chooses his own moral compass over the dictates of society. His words, "All right then, I'll go to hell," are powerful because they demonstrate the courage it takes to stand up for what you believe is right, even when it goes against everything you've been taught.
It's incredible how Twain uses a young boy's voice to make such a profound statement about morality and conscience.
It's masterful, and he doesn't shy away from exposing the hypocrisy of the adult world. Think about the Grangerfords and Shepherdsons, those feuding families who are obsessed with honor and tradition while blindly participating in a senseless cycle of violence.
It's like they're trapped by their own beliefs, unable to see the absurdity of their actions.
Exactly. Twain uses satire to highlight the dangers of blind adherence to tradition and how easily people can be swayed by mob mentality.
And speaking of being swayed, Huck and Jim encounter their fair share of con men along the way. Remember the Duke and the Dauphin?
Oh, yeah.
Those guys were hilarious.
Their antics are definitely entertaining, but they also serve a purpose. These con men, with their outlandish schemes and tall tales, highlight the gullibility of people and the ease with which they can be manipulated.
Like the Royal Nonsuch play, where they tricked an entire town into paying for a ridiculous performance.
It's a perfect example of how Twain uses humor to expose the absurdity of human behavior and how easily we fall for appearances.
And throughout all these encounters, Huck is constantly learning, observing, and forming his own opinions about the world.
He's like a sponge, soaking up the complexities of human nature, both good and bad.
Yeah.
And it's through his eyes that we as readers are forced to confront those complexities as well.
So we're seeing these themes of freedom, morality, and hypocrisy all intertwined as Huck and Jim make their way down the river.
Absolutely. And as we continue to follow their journey, we'll see how these themes deepen and evolve, ultimately challenging us to consider what true freedom and moral courage really mean.
Sounds like we got a lot more to unpack.
We do. And I think you'll be surprised by how relevant these themes remain even today.
All right, sounds good.
Their journey, as they continue downriver, it takes a turn towards the more complex when they encounter the Grangerfords. This seemingly respectable family
Oh, yeah.
draws them in with hospitality, but there's this dark undercurrent of violence lurking beneath the surface.
Right, that whole feud with the Shepherdsons, it seems like it's been going on forever and nobody even remembers why they're fighting anymore.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of how Twain uses satire to critique blind adherence to tradition and the pointlessness of cyclical violence.
Yeah.
The Grangerfords and Shepherdsons are so consumed by their hatred that they've lost sight of any real reason for it.
Yeah, it's tragic, especially when you consider that their children are caught in the crossfire.
Absolutely. And it's through Huck's innocent eyes that we see the true horror of this feud. He's disturbed by the bloodshed and can't understand why these families are so willing to destroy each other.
It's like he's a moral compass pointing out the absurdity of the adult world.
That's a great way to put it. Huck's naivete acts as a foil to the ingrained prejudices and senseless violence he witnesses.
Right.
He's constantly questioning, observing, and coming to his own conclusions about right and wrong.
And this really comes to a head when Huck and Jim are separated, and Huck ends up at the Phelps farm, mistaken for Tom Sawyer.
Ah, yes, the Phelps farm. This is where we see the theme of deception and mistaken identity take center stage.
Right.
And it's also where Tom Sawyer re-enters the picture, adding a whole new layer of complexity to the story.
Yeah, Tom's arrival definitely throws a wrench into things. He comes up with this elaborate and, frankly, ridiculous plan to free Jim, even though Jim is technically already free.
It's almost as if Tom is more interested in the adventure and romanticism of the escape than in Jim's actual well-being. He wants secret messages, coded notes, and all sorts of unnecessary complications.
Like that whole thing with the grindstone. They nearly break their backs trying to steal it just to carve inscriptions for Jim's prison cell.
Exactly. And he insists on digging Jim out with case knives when they could just lift the bedstead.
Oh my God.
It's also over the top. But I think Twain is using Tom's antics to satirize the romantic notions surrounding heroism and adventure. He's showing how these fantasies can blind us to the real-world consequences of our actions.
So instead of simply condemning slavery, he's using Tom to expose the foolishness of those who perpetuate it, even unintentionally.
Precisely. And in doing so, he raises some interesting questions about the nature of freedom and who gets to define it. Jim, for example, shows remarkable patience throughout this whole ordeal, trusting his young friends even when their plans seem absurd.
It makes you think about the power dynamics at play. Even though Tom means well, he's still imposing his own ideas of what freedom should look like onto Jim.
That's a great observation. And it highlights the subtle ways in which even well-intentioned individuals can perpetuate systems of oppression.
So after all this drama, Tom's plan is eventually put into action, and they manage to get Jim out. But then, in a classic Twain twist, we find out that Jim was actually free all along. Miss Watson had died and freed him in her will.
Let's talk about an ironic twist. It's almost as if Twain is saying, all this chaos, all this effort, and it was all for nothing.
Right.
But it also underscores the absurdity of the entire institution of slavery.
It's like he's holding up a mirror to society and saying, look how ridiculous this is. This man was already free, yet we put him through all this unnecessary pain and suffering.
It's a powerful statement. And while some might criticize the ending as being too neat or convenient, I think it serves to further highlight the arbitrary and unjust nature of slavery.
Yeah, it also makes you wonder about the motivations of the characters involved. Tom, for example, seems genuinely remorseful when he finds out Jim was already free. He even gives Jim $40.
And Jim's reaction to that gesture is beautiful. He's overjoyed not just by the money, but by the acknowledgement of his humanity.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even amidst the darkness and absurdity, there are moments of grace and redemption.
Exactly. And it speaks to the resilience of the human spirit, the ability to find hope and joy even in the face of incredible hardship.
And then there's that final scene where Huck says he's lighting out for the territory. It's like he's rejecting the constraints of civilized society and searching for something more authentic.
It's an ambiguous ending that leaves us with many questions. Will Huck find the freedom he's seeking? Will he ever be able to reconcile his own beliefs with the expectations of the world around him?
I guess those are questions each reader has to answer for themselves. You know, it's interesting. Even after everything they go through, Huck and Jim still hold on to their superstitions.
Yeah, you're right. It's like they're looking for something solid to hold on to in a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable.
Yeah.
Think about Jim's hairball that he uses for fortune-telling, or his insistence on interpreting dreams.
Right. It's almost as if they need those beliefs to navigate the uncertainty of their journey.
Exactly. And it reminds us that even in a story as groundbreaking as Huckleberry Finn, we're still dealing with the human need for meaning-making. We look for patterns and explanations, even in the most random events.
Right. It makes you wonder if those superstitions are just a reflection of the time period or if they speak to something deeper about human nature.
That's a great question. And it's something Twain leaves open for us to ponder. I think it speaks to the power of storytelling, how we use narratives to make sense of our experiences and share them with others.
Yeah.
And Huckleberry Finn is, at its core, a story about storytelling.
And what a storyteller Huck is. His voice is so authentic,
Yeah.
so unfiltered. He doesn't shy away from the hard truths.
That's what makes him such a compelling narrator. He challenges us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our society.
Right.
He's not afraid to call out hypocrisy wherever he sees it.
And that's what makes Huckleberry Finn such a timeless and enduring work of literature. It sparks debate and discussion even over a century after it was written.
It's true, it's not always an easy read, but it's a necessary one. It forces us to ask tough questions about race, freedom, morality, and the very nature of humanity.
So what does this all mean for us today? What can we take away from Huck's adventures?
Well, I think Adventures of Huckleberry Finn serves as a powerful reminder that individual conscience can be a force for change. Even in a world where societal norms often try to dictate our beliefs, it encourages us to question what we've been taught and to stand up for what we believe is right.
Like Huck choosing to help Jim even though he thought he'd go to hell for it.
Exactly. It's a powerful testament to the idea that sometimes you have to go against the grain to do what's truly moral. And it challenges us to examine our own beliefs and actions, asking ourselves where we might be complicit in systems of oppression, even unintentionally.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about.
It is, but that's the power of great literature. It stays with you. It makes you think. It challenges you to be better.
I think Huck Finn would be proud of that.
I think so too.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. I hope you'll continue to explore its complexities and find your own meaning in its pages.
And remember, just like Huck, we all have the power to light out for the territory, to seek our own truths, and to fight for a more just world.
Beautifully said. Until next time, happy reading.